Hey guys, Alex here, back again for another video. And yeah, today I went onto my channel earlier today and I was kind of going through my recent uploads and I noticed that I've made 99 videos up until this point on this channel. So obviously that means that this is the 100th video that I've made for MrDylanRecords. Um, So yeah, I mean, I know it's not a lot of videos. I know plenty of people in the VC that have made, double, triple that amount. I know that Derek's made, I think, close to 2,000 videos maybe now, maybe even over 2,000 videos, which is just, inconceivable. But yeah, I mean, 100 videos is still a significant number, and I wanted to kind of honor that today, and I was thinking about it, and I just kind of wanted to go back to the kind of roots of the channel, and kind of go back to what I was doing right at the start when I created MrDylanRecords back in December of 2010, I think it was. Yeah, I think it was on Boxing Day of 2010. I kind of created the channel out of boredom, I think initially, and I didn't really have any idea what I was going to do with it. And as it kind of progressed, I was mainly doing stuff that centered around, my kind of Bob Dylan CDs, bootlegs, reviews, lists, and rankings of Bob Dylan albums and stuff. And yeah, I mean, I had a good time doing those videos back in 2010 and 2011 before I discovered the vinyl community and before I even started collecting records. Which obviously kind of changed my life, I guess, and changed the channel. And from then on, I was just doing mainly vinyl videos and threads and stuff. But yeah, today I kind of wanted to go back and do something Dylan related, considering the channel is called MrDylanRecords. And yeah, what I'm going to do is a top 15 Bob Dylan songs of the 60s. And this actually comes after a suggestion from somebody who commented on my last video, my vinyl update, and his name is Sammy Chadwick. And he said it would be cool to see your top 10 Bob Dylan songs of all time, I think he said. And thanks for the suggestion, Sammy. I kind of thought about it after seeing your comment, sat down and tried to compile like a top 10 or top 20 Bob Dylan songs of all time list. And after about, as I say, 20 minutes of trying, I just came to the conclusion that I was never going to fit all of my favourite Dylan songs into, a top 10 list or even a top 20 list. So I thought about it, and I thought I'd kind of split it up into the different decades and extend it to top 15. So that I could kind of fit all my favourite songs into each list. So that's what I'm going to start with today. I'm going to do the 60s today, then I'll move on to the 70s, 80s, 90s, and so on. Even though I'm not as much of a fan of the 80s, 90s, and 2000s stuff as I am, of course, of the 60s and 70s. So those will be the main videos I'll focus on. But yeah, today I'm going to do a top 15 Bob Dylan songs of the 60s, which I thought would be a bit of fun for the 100th video. So yeah, I'll get into that list in just a second. Playing in the background, I'm not sure if you can hear it properly, but listening to the Freewheelin Bob Dylan, of course, from 1963. This is my music on vinyl reissue in mono. And yeah, I definitely recommend, if you're in the market for a new Bob Dylan reissue or just a reissue in general, then definitely check out what Music on Vinyl has to offer. They have tons and tons of great reissues, pretty reasonable prices, and they do a great job with. I've only got the Freewheelin on Music on Vinyl, but it sounds amazing. So yeah, check them out for sure. So yeah, I'll get straight into this top 15 list. I'm not gonna babble on for hours, even though I probably could about each one of these songs. I just have so much I want to say about each song. I'm going to have to kind of restrain myself. But first, I'm going to give you a few notable mentions which could have easily made this top 15 list but didn't quite cut it, I guess. So we've got Masters of War from the album we're listening to now, Freewheelin. Kind of a great early protest song. To Ramona is one of Dylan's best early love songs, I would say, from another side of Bob Dylan. Gates of Eden from Bringing It All Back Home, definitely one of the best songs on that album, one of the most mysterious songs, always makes me think. Then we have Stuck Inside of Mobile with the Memphis Blues again. One of the more wacky kind of abstract songs. I almost want to say psychedelic in terms of lyrical content that Dylan wrote. Definitely could have made the list. One of my favourite songs from Blonde on Blonde, but didn't quite make it. And then finally, All Along the Watchtower from John Wesley Harding, of course, from 67. So those are the notable mentions. Okay, so getting into this top 15 list then. Starting here with number 15, and this was a song that actually got me introduced to Bob Dylan initially. I think it must have been back in 2008, 2009. No, I think it was probably 2009. And it was quite a strange one actually, because of all the places to be introduced to your favourite artist ever, I was actually in an English lesson at the time, and I think we were learning about poetry, and we had our anthologies, and we were reading with the teacher, and she saw a line in one of the poems which reminded her of her favourite Bob Dylan song, and she stopped halfway through and was like, "Oh, remind me to show you guys a video of Bob Dylan at the end of the class." And none of us had any idea who Bob Dylan was. And so at the end of the class, she put this video on, she typed his name into YouTube, put this video on, and everybody was just sat there kind of rolling their eyes. I probably was doing the same at the start. And, everybody was just sat there kind of not paying any attention. And after a couple of minutes of this song, I was just transfixed with what I was seeing. And it was Blowin' in the Wind, was the first song I heard. And yeah, that was just the start of it all. After listening to that song in that English lesson, I went on and discovered so many more songs, ended up buying a couple of his albums, and it all kind of just took off from there. But it was quite a weird start to discovering Dylan's music. But I just couldn't believe that I hadn't heard any of his music before that, or I'd heard his name here and there, but I hadn't heard his music before listening to Blowing in the Wind in that fateful English lesson, which was kind of weird. So that's at number 15. So at number 14, we have Ballad of Frankie Lee and Judas Priest, obviously from John Wesley Harding, released in 1967. Maybe some people will consider that a weird choice. It's definitely not a lot of people's favourite on that album. Many people would go for All Along the Watchtower or I'll Be Your Baby Tonight. Those are the more popular songs, but I just really enjoy Ballad of Frankie Lee and Judas Priest. I love the kind of moral message behind the song that Dylan's trying to deliver through the story that he's telling with obviously Judas Priest and Frankie Lee, and the way that he kind of develops that story. Just a really big fan of that song. So that's number 14. Number 13, we have Ballad of a Thin Man, obviously from Highway 61. One of the best songs on that album, even though I'm not a massive fan of the studio take that was done for that song. I'm a huge fan of the live versions, which were on some of the bootlegs that he did in 66, obviously on the world tour. Just such an electric, powerful performance, of that song that he gives. It's such an iconic image of him sitting at that piano, being booed, with the wild hair and just pounding the keys, delivering this song about people just not understanding what he's doing and where he's coming from. I guess you could say it's a political song or kind of a politically charged song in some kind of way, but in other ways it's just kind of typical of what he was doing on Highway 61 in general as well. So yeah, big fan of that song obviously, but I think they could have done more with the studio version that ended up on Highway 61. At number 12, we have Love Minus Zero over No Limit, obviously from Bring It All Back Home. This song is just so blissfully simple to me. When I first heard this song, I was kind of trying to delve deeper and find something, more complex about it, and something, trying to find the hidden messages. And then in the end, I just came to the conclusion that it's a song that should be enjoyed for its simplicity, for its kind of blissfulness, and I think that's what Dylan was going for on there, and it's really a joy to listen to. There's a great version that he does in a hotel room, I think in the Savoy Hotel, where he's playing to Donovan and he plays this song, and it's just an amazing moment. It's one of those moments where you're like, damn, I wish I could have been there to hear him play this song, or just play anything, to be honest. But yeah, that's number 12. Number 11, kind of going back slightly to the earlier days. This is from Times They Are Changing, Ballad of Hollis Brown. One of the most haunting songs that Dylan did, certainly in his early career. He wrote this song way back in, I think, 1962, and he played it a whole bunch of times live, and the live versions, again, is where he really comes through with some really amazing performances of this song, and the story is just so harrowing, so so chilling. He kind of tells the story of this guy that kind of goes through all these depressing thoughts, and kind of turns into a bit of a psycho, I guess, and then ends up, I think, killing his family. So yeah, pretty chilling stuff, and shows the kind of audacity that Dylan had even in the early days to write these kind of pretty risky songs, even though he was kind of taking things. I think he might have taken this out of the newspaper, which is something he was kind of doing at the time with songs like Lonesome Death of Hattie Carroll and this song and some other ones, where he was really getting very topical and kind of changing, stories that he'd already read from the newspaper and other things. But yeah, Ballad of Hollis Brown, definitely one of my favourite early Dylan songs, kind of pre-1965 songs. Yeah, definitely one of his best, I would say. Okay, so moving into the top 10 now. At number 10, we have a song which I just couldn't leave off the list, Subterranean Homesick Blues, which of course is the opener to Bringing It All Back Home. Yeah, this song is just amazing. I mean, I'd say that it probably used to be one of my favourite up in the top 5 Dylan songs when I first heard this, and of course watched the video, which is perhaps even more famous than the song, with Dylan with the cue cards. I expect most people have seen the video, but if by any chance you haven't seen it, you definitely need to. It's one of the kind of landmark music videos. In fact, I think it was one of the first music videos to be made back in the 60s, especially particularly from a kind of popular artist. So I'll try and find it on YouTube, and I'll put a link in the description for that video. But yeah, just a really punchy, snappy, catchy song based on a Chuck Berry melody, I believe, kind of rock and roll number. And Dylan just puts his own stamp on the melody and comes out with this just rebellious song, which is just incredible. At number 9, we have Fourth Time Around from Blonde on Blonde. And again, this is probably not the first song people would pick as their favourite on Blonde on Blonde. But yeah, kind of like Love Minus Zero, it's kind of blissfully simple, and that's why I love this song. You don't have to kind of delve deep into Dylan's psyche or anything to understand, what he's trying to say. It's just kind of one of those songs that kind of, drifts along and doesn't really have a message for me. It might have an underlying message for some people, but I don't really listen to it for that. I just enjoy, what it says on the surface, I guess. And, Dylan kind of tells this story of being with a prostitute and then having to leave, being kicked out by her and being on the streets, coming back after forgetting his clothes and asking her for rum and all this crazy stuff. And it's kind of pretty telling of the state he was in at the time, kind of wrapped up in so many different psyches and just being so drugged up. It was pretty hard for him to function and think like a normal human being. So yeah, I listen to it and it takes me on a journey, I guess. Um, so that's number 9. Number 8, we have another song from Blonde on Blonde, "Sad Eyed Lady of the Lowlands," which yeah, most probably, well, my second favorite song, no, my third favorite song on Blonde on Blonde. Um, this song is obviously a monumental length. I think it's 11 or 12 minutes in total. And Dylan's kind of paying homage to his wife at the time, Sarah Lowndes. Um, and it's just a beautiful listen, just listening to him sing with so much passion, even though you can hear how kind of drugged up and wasted he is. He's still singing with such such love and such passion for his wife, and it's just a great song. I can't really say anything more than that. So at number 7 we have "I Want You," another song from Blonde on Blonde. You're probably starting to see a trend here. That's probably because Blonde on Blonde is my favorite album of all time. And yeah, "I Want You" is another great example of a great song from that album. I don't really know what to say about this song. I just love the kind of youthful energy it has. And for me, it kind of sums up what Dylan was saying with his "thin, wild Mercury sound" statement when he was describing Blonde on Blonde. You kind of don't need to know what he's talking about to know what he means with that statement when you listen to songs like when you listen to songs like "I Want You." Um, it just has such a definitive sound to it, and just everything seems to come together so seamlessly that it just has this kind of trademark sound that you wouldn't mistake for anything else. And I think that's what he was trying to get at when he said, the "thin, wild Mercury sound," because that doesn't really make a lot of sense. But yeah, I love the song "I Want You." It's definitely one of my favorites on Blonde on Blonde. I think it's my most played song on my iTunes out of any song. I think I've played it something like 250 times, which is amazing. Shows just how much I like listening to it, I guess. So that's number 7. Number 6, kind of harking back to the earlier days, a song from Freewheelin. We have "A Hard Rain's Gonna Fall." And yeah, this is a very significant song, of course, in Dylan's early career. He wrote it at such an important time. Historically, the Cuban Missile Crisis was happening. It was around the time that Kennedy got assassinated, and it was a really significant time, politically and historically. And these songs were very important. These kind of protest songs were very important to a lot of people, and I think "Hard Rain's Gonna Fall" is probably my favorite of Dylan's protest songs or topical songs, and it's just so emotional to listen to. I don't so much get emotional listening to it now, but talking to people who were around back in the early '60s, my parents were both alive, and they talk about how scary it was to just be to just be alive at that time, and it must have been even greater in the States. So yeah, it's an emotional song to listen to. So that's number 6. Number 5, definitely one of the best songs Dylan ever wrote, and in fact he kind of kept this song very close to him. He could have put it on Another Side of Bob Dylan, but he kept it off that album and kind of worked at it and ended up putting it on Bringing It All Back Home. And of course the song is "Mr. Tambourine Man." And I think this was the second song after, of course, "Blowing in the Wind." This was the second song that I listened to from Dylan, and I think I watched the Newport 1964 performance, which is just entrancing. You should definitely watch it if you haven't. I don't know if it's still on YouTube because they've changed some of the copyright and stuff, but just an amazing song. I mean, so poetic, so beautiful, and yeah, just a really great song. I don't really know what to say about it other than if you haven't heard it, then you need to, because it's one of Dylan's best. Some people would probably put it as their number 1, but it's number 5 of the '60s on my list. At number 4, we have "Desolation Row," which again, like "Sad Eyed Lady of the Lowlands," is the epic 12-minute closer, this time to Highway 61 from 1965. And what can I say about this song? Again, one of the best, lyrical songs that Dylan ever wrote. Just an incredible story. And, I would say this is probably the most hilarious song that Dylan ever wrote. There are reports from the first few times he played this live back in '65. The majority of the audience was just cracking up listening to this because they just simply never heard anything like this before, especially from somebody like Dylan, who was, they were so used to hearing these kind of troubadour-like protest, rebellious songs, like Times They Are Changing and Blowing in the Wind, and these kind of anti-war anthems, I guess. And then here he is in 1965, and he comes out and plays, the weirdest song, Desolation Row, kind of putting these household name characters in these weird and unorthodox scenarios and kind of playing out their stories individually. And it's just amazing. I mean, the structure of it is really interesting, and he kind of ties it all together at the end, kind of making it into this kind of letter and this kind of dialogue between two people, which is really interesting. And it's just a masterpiece, and it's a really epic closer, I guess, to Highway 61, which is this incredible album. And it's topped off with with Desolation Row, which is one of my favorites from definitely one of my favorites from that album. So that's number 4. Moving into the top 3, we have at number 3 we have Visions of Johanna, which again is an amazing story. I mean, Dylan was a great storyteller. He's always been a great storyteller, but I think with Desolation Row and Visions of Johanna, he paints these incredibly vivid stories in your head, and you kind of feel like you're part of the story when you're listening to them. And Visions of Johanna it's definitely been my favourite Dylan song in the past. Obviously it's number 3 on this list, but it's just an amazing song. Again, a song that he worked very hard to kind of craft and nail down to perfection in the studio. I think he did something like 20 or 30 takes of this. And, a lot of Dylan songs that you listen to kind of feel a little bit unfinished and a bit rough around the edges, the songs he did in the studio. But Visions of Johanna, he really, you can hear that he really kind of nailed it and kind of got it up to scratch in the end. And, it's one of those magical moments in the studio where everybody seems to come together, and the timing is perfect, and the band comes in at the right times, and his voice fits perfectly, and the result is one of the best songs I think he ever recorded, definitely. So Visions of Johanna at number 3. Number 2 is undoubtedly my favourite song lyrically from Dylan in the 60s, and that is It's Alright Ma, I'm Only Bleeding. Don't really know what I can say about this song. It's almost like he's sermonizing. You just sit back and listen to this, and Dylan just pounds you with these, line after line of, these loaded messages, I guess, that he's trying to convey. And it's almost like he's got a whole philosophy in 6 minutes. It's just incredible how he kind of manages to boil down so many different ideas, so many different messages into one single song. And it's just a masterpiece. It's one of those songs you just sit back at the end and say, how did a human being write something this complex and so incredible in 6 minutes? So that's number 2. Number 1, pretty boring choice for number 1. You're probably gonna think this is pretty obvious, but I had to put this at number 1 simply because it was one of the songs that really inspired me to get into the more electric stuff, the mid-60s stuff that Dylan was doing, and I just couldn't look past it. Of course, number 1 we have Like a Rolling Stone. Like a Rolling Stone is, I know it was put as number 1 on Rolling Stone's 500 Greatest Songs of All Time, but that didn't really influence my decision. I've always loved this song, and it's always genuinely been my favourite Dylan song if I had to pick. So, what can I really say about it? I mean, you know, it did a lot for Dylan's career at the time. He was going through kind of a creative down period after he came back from England in '65, and he talks about how he kind of ended up writing this long piece of vomit, as he describes it, which is really weird. And it was like 20 pages long or something when he first wrote it, and he had to kind of cut it down to just being 6 minutes long. And yeah, it kind of saved his whole career. He was thinking about giving up music entirely before writing this. And of course, he recorded it, and it's again one of those moments like Visions of Johanna that everything comes together. And the studio version of this is just so pummeling, so aggressive, and just hits me every single time I listen to it. So yeah, I just couldn't look past putting Like a Rolling Stone at number one. But it's very hard to rank Dylan songs. But hey, I had to put something at number one, so it's Like a Rolling Stone. So those are my top 15 favourite Bob Dylan songs of the 60s. Let me know down in the comments some of your favourite Dylan songs of the 60s, and let me know what you think of my list. And yeah, I just thought it was a cool idea to go back and you know, do something Dylan related again, like I was doing at the start for the 100th video. But yeah, I just want to say thank you to everybody who's subscribed over these last 3 years. It's been an amazing journey, you know, being part of the VC and, you know, becoming a vinyl collector. And yeah, just thank you to everybody who's been a part of it. And I just really hope that it carries on, you know, well into the future, and, you know, I can be a part of it going forward. But yeah, thanks for watching this video. As I say, let me know some of your opinions on your favourite Dylan songs of the 60s, and hopefully I'll get on and do my 70s list somewhere down the line, maybe before I go back to uni, which would be cool. But yeah, I got a couple of other things lined up that I want to do. My next video will probably be a thread response, which I'll try and do tomorrow. But apart from that, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.